What's up, sensational seekers and entertainment enthusiasts? Welcome back to your definitive source for the stories that shape pop culture, the legends who define an era, and the rare glimpses into the lives of rock and roll royalty. Today, we're not just talking about news, we're unearthing a piece of history, a lost treasure from the rock and roll vault. We're talking about a newly rediscovered, never-before-heard interview with the one and only Ozzy Osbourne, the legendary singer, co-founder of Black Sabbath, and the man known as the Prince of Darkness. In the wake of his passing at the age of 76, this interview, which took place many years ago in a hotel suite in 1987, offers an incredible time capsule. It's a raw, unfiltered look at Ozzy at a very specific and turbulent moment in his life, still deep in his wildman of rock and roll phase, but also a grieving bandmate and a surprisingly candid, vulnerable artist. The scene itself, as described by the reporter who conducted the interview for a now-defunct teen heavy metal magazine, is a perfect image of mid-80s rock star chaos. The interview was no small challenge. It was a day in March of 1987, and the reporter was sent to Ozzy's hotel suite for an 11 a.m. appointment. That's right, 11 a.m. It's a time of day that, for a rock star like Ozzy in that era, was probably the middle of the night. The night before, he had been out with his publicist, Mitchell Schneider, taking into shows a roots band called the Radiators, and the legendary southern rocker Greg Allman. Ozzy, apparently, did not enjoy the latter, and complained about it several times. This is the Ozzy we're about to meet, hungover, a little grumpy, but always entertaining. As he emerged from his bedroom, he was clearly just woken up, wearing only a leopardskin pattern bathrobe. But here's where it gets interesting, where the myth of Ozzy meets the reality of the man. The robe only partially concealed a ferocious monster face tattoo on his chest, a symbol of his public persona. Yet, as he sat down, his knees poked through the robe, revealing a simple, childlike smiley face is tattooed on each knee. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes. The Prince of Darkness with smiley faces on his knees. This, right there, is the entire essence of Ozzy. He was also, curiously, wearing a mountain of jewelry, to massive diamond rings, a gold bracelet, necklaces, and a gold, top-of-the-line Rolex watch, the face of which was encircled with diamonds. His hair was shorter than usual, a bit spiked on top, and frosted. A look that was very much of the mid-80s. The very first exchange of the interview is a perfect example of his on-brand, self-deprecating humor. As he entered the room, his publicist, Mitch, asked, "Do you need anything, Ozzy?" To which he responded, without missing a beat, "A new brain." This is the Ozzy we know and love, a rock and roll god who never took himself too seriously, even when the rest of the world did. The main subject of this lost interview was a live album that was a particularly sensitive subject for Ozzy at the time. The album Tribute. This was no ordinary live album. It was a concert recording that featured the late Randy Rhoads, the brilliant guitarist who had co-written and played on Ozzy's first two solo albums, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. Rhoads was tragically killed in a 1980 plane crash at the impossibly young age of 24, while the band was on tour. The tribute album was being released on the 5th anniversary of his death, and it was clear that talking about it was still an incredibly painful ordeal for Ozzy. He explained why the album had taken so long to come out, "Because I thought it would be sick to release it sooner after Rhoads' death," he said, his words raw and honest. He revealed that he was under a contractual obligation to deliver a double-live album, but he simply couldn't bring himself to release an album featuring Rhoads so soon after the tragedy. He was still grieving, and as he put it, he didn't want to know anything about it. To fulfill his contract, they instead recorded Speak of the Devil, a live album of old Black Sabbath songs with a different guitarist, Brad Gillis. It's a fascinating piece of music history that shows the immense personal and professional pressure Ozzy was under at the time, but the tribute album was the real, emotional one. Ozzy admitted that he didn't have much to do with the compilation of the album. "I think I spent about an hour in the studio saying, 'That's a good mix and all that,'" he said. He stressed his desire for the album to sound authentic, to sound live, not like a doctored fucking version of a live album. This shows his artistic integrity, his respect for the memory of Randy Rhoads, and his commitment to giving fans the real, raw energy of their live performances. In a wonderful moment of pure Ozzy, he picked up a copy of the single for the album and looked at it incredulously. "Wow," he said, staring at the title. "You looking at me looking at you. Originally this was gonna be on the album." It was one of those early songs that God, I haven't heard that for years. He then proceeded to sing a few lines of the obscure song, a perfect, unscripted glimpse into the mind of a musician whose brain was a treasure trove of forgotten tunes. Sings you, looking at me, looking at you. It's a moment that captures his spontaneous, almost childlike love for the music he created. The long interview also touched on several other fascinating topics. He talked about his relationship with his wife and manager, Sharon Osbourne, with whom he had a professional partnership that would become legendary. He spoke about the Ozzy incarnations of Black Sabbath, a topic that was always a sore spot for him. And he talked about a more serious issue, death threats, a part of his life that came with being the controversial, boundary-pushing Prince of Darkness. But perhaps one of the most entertaining parts of the interview was when he talked about the then popular glam metal movement of the late 80s. For a man who had pioneered the dark, gritty sound of heavy metal, he was completely mystified by the big hair, the makeup, and the flashy outfits of bands like Poison. In a wonderfully candid and hilarious moment of self-reflection, he admitted, "I even fancied the effing lead singer of Poison." He used what can be considered a slur against the LGBTQ community. And while we would never excuse the use of that word today, it's important to acknowledge that it was a different time, and his comment was made more out of confusion and bewildered humor than genuine malice. It's a perfect example of how his persona was always one of an outsider, a person who was always a step behind the cultural trends, even the ones in his own genre. This lost interview is more than just a series of quotes. It's a portrait of a rock legend caught between worlds. He was a hungover rock star in a leopard print bathrobe and a diamond-encrusted Rolex. But he was also a grieving friend with smiley faces on his knees. Still grappling with the tragic death of a bandmate, he was an artist who wanted his work to be authentic, a husband and musician whose life was a whirlwind of controversy and creativity. This lost interview is a rare, human look into the man behind the madness, and it serves as a beautiful, raw tribute to the enduring legacy of Ozzy Osbourne. And that, sensational seekers, brings us to the close of this deep dive into a lost piece of music history. This rediscovered interview reminds us that Ozzy Osbourne was a complex, fascinating, and deeply human figure whose legacy goes far beyond the headlines. What is your favorite Ozzy Osbourne or Black Sabbath song? What's your most memorable Ozzy moment? Share your thoughts and memories of the Prince of Darkness in the comments below. We always love hearing from our fellow fans, and as always, thank you for tuning in as we bring you the stories that electrify the stage and screen. Until next time, stay sensational, and may the Prince of Darkness rest in peace.